Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, this festival includes 4 days of fun activities, imaginative presentations, and over 25 short and feature-length films, screening November 14th through the 17th at the Roxy. To learn more about the Kidamatic Film Festival, go to kidamatic.org.
Help protect our community from prescription drug misuse, abuse, and overdose on National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. This Saturday, you can turn in your unused or expired medications at the Grizz game. Just look for the DEA booth at the parking lot near the entrance of the stadium. If you can't make it to the game, go to MissoulaCounty.us for a list of Dropbox locations in Missoula. This event is brought to you by Curry Health Center, Safe Kids Missoula at Foundation for Community Health, and the Prescription Drug Task Force, a coalition of Missoula City County Health Department.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Montana State at Northern Colorado. And the Grizzlies battle the Vandals for the Little Brown Stein. And also, college basketball is here. Good afternoon. How are you? Great to be with you. It is Tutel Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you here on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you are having a wonderful day. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, and online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you would like to find us, you can find us on the World Wide Web. You heard of that thing? 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen live via the stream. The stream is available all the time, and it is there thanks to Opportunity Bank. Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to pick up your phone and call 329-1899 is the phone number. We will all guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We're going to hear from a couple of football head coaches, namely Bobby Hauck and Jeff Choate. Perhaps you've heard of them. Bobby Hauck going to talk about the Idaho Vandals. Jeff Choate about Northern Colorado. Why? Well, that's because that's who the teams are playing. So we'll continue as we get ready for Week 10 in college football. How about that? Amazing. Also, today, here in about a half an hour, Paul Caputo. He is from sportslogos.net. He actually is a writer about sports logos. And with the big news and the reveal yesterday of the Missoula Paddleheads and the new name, the new logos, all that stuff being out there, he's going to come in, talk to us about that, about the sort of the things that he's seen, what he thinks of these logos, and the relationship to sort of the wider landscape of logos and team names and mascots and so forth out there in the world. So it'll be fun to talk to him. At the top of the hour, we get into basketball. Buddy, are you kidding me right now? Colter, Montana State at Utah State tonight, men's basketball. The Lady Grizz opened their season with a win in front of, I don't know, every screaming child in America earlier today. So that's already up and going. And then the University of Montana men's team, they are at Stanford tomorrow night, opening, with just another bad. If I'm not mistaken, actually, Utah State. The Cats played tonight. They're like 18th in the nation, something like that.
There's no mistake about it. Utah State is one of the best programs in the country.
Totally.
Utah State got an 8 seed out of the Mountain West last year, and a lot of people thought that was a little bit low.
Right.
Sam Merrill, remember the name. He's one of the best players in college basketball. He might be the best player in the Western United States right now. Sam Merrill will be an All-American candidate by the time this season's all said and done.
Well, that's obviously a big task for Danny Sprinkle and the Bobcats, and Sprinkle's first game as the head coach at Montana State. Exciting day certainly for him and for the Bobcats as well, and always for everybody. And then, of course, the Grizzlies at Stanford tomorrow. So we're going to get into all that. We're going to hear from both Danny Sprinkle and Travis DeCure in this show talking about those games. And by the way, for what it's worth, the college basketball opens on ESPN Radio tonight as well. Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky. A doubleheader. We'll have it for you tonight. The Duke-Kansas game begins at 5 o'clock. We'll send you right out for that game, which will probably be on into the second half by the time we get you to it. We'll keep you updated as it goes. And by the way, this is also when they the big reveal today for the actual college football rankings, the ones that are relevant anyway for the playoff, the first ones today in between games there. So you'll hear those on ESPN Radio as well. And then at 5 o'clock, I don't know, man. I'm pretty bitter about this one, I must say. I made a bet.
Well, you should be.
Well, I am.
It's not just the losing. They just look terrible.
I mean, Coulter, what do you know about me? The only thing I care about is myself. Okay, I mean, I want, obviously, the Packers to win, but that's all well and good. But I made a bet with our friend Sean Rainey, ABC Fox Television, and the loser has to read a poem that the winner writes. Well, guess what? The Chargers they beat down the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. And I had the Packers. They're my team. Sean's team is the Chargers. Hapless though they are, they managed to get a win. In fact, Green Bay was horrendous in that football game. And I have here a poem, which I will read to you at 5:30 from Sean Rainey, which he has written. It is the payment of the bet. That way, the only thing that's going to make me feel better is also talking about beating you in fantasy head-to-head this weekend. So there you go. That's the show outlook. It is brought to us by Shine Auto Detailing online, MissoulaAutoDetailing.com. Get your car looking good and protected. Shine Auto Detailing. What are you grinning about, Coulter?
Well, first of all, my fantasy situation is a disaster. There's no way to explain it. No one knows. No one can give me an explanation. People think I'm just lying. If you look at my 2 ESPN accounts, that my team is named the Dead Rock Miners. It says that my name is Lisa Nace. I cannot change my name back to Coulter Nuanez. It is hooked up to an email of mine, but there is no way to recover a password. There's no way to change my identity. I am some woman who lives in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And I've tried to change my biography. Regardless, what I'm saying is, then therefore, when I got locked out of my account and I could not remember my password, I forfeited the fantasy football season because I could not change my lineup for 3 consecutive weeks.
You run a website.
No, I write for a website. My brother runs it.
That's fair. I mean, we'll talk to Brooks then. I mean, the thing is hacked on the ESPN side of things. It sounds like an excuse, but you can see my name is Lisa, and that's not my name. Let me tell you something. I know some people. Okay, I got some connections in Bristol. We will get you sorted out.
Thanks, man. Regardless, I thought the most revealing part of the Packers-Chargers game was that I left after watching that game in its duration thinking, how in the heck are the Chargers bad? They should not be bad. They have no excuse to be bad. They're the only team in the league that has 2 absolutely elite edge guys. The only one. That in itself should make you a borderline, if not surefire, playoff team.
You don't think Ziggy Ansah and Jadeveon Clowney?
5 years ago?
Yeah. It was more tongue-in-cheek, that one.
I mean, Nick Bosa's getting all the headlines. People forgot about Joey Bosa. He's a freak. He's so good. Him and Melvin Ingram. The thing is, when they line those guys up on the same side, not on the edge like they did against the Packers, it's just jailbreak. One of the 2 of them's getting home. I don't know. I watching them, I thought it wasn't like, oh man, they just rose up for this one game. They're just good. I don't understand how they're not better. And then when you listen to and read Sean Rainey's Twitter, you realize it's because they just truly mismanage every game and they figure out how to lose the games in the last 2 minutes.
Well, evidently the Green Bay Packers did what the New England Patriots do when they visit Miami. And they went out in the City of Angels and they found a way not to show up on Sunday, is how I'm understanding that, and I accept that. Okay? The egg has been laid. Move on.
Davante Adams clearly wasn't healthy.
They stunk.
Yeah, but they were better without Davante Adams.
Aaron Jones ran for like 20 yards. I mean, what in the world? Brian Bulaga got boat. And now look, everything you said about Ingram and Bosa, they're as real as real gets. But so is Brian Bulaga, and he got straight whipped all day. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm reading a poem for you at 5:30. Thanks for nothing, Sean Rainey. Coulter, let's start with the battle for the Little Brown Stein. as we're on to Idaho. As we came out and talked about Portland State for Montana yesterday. We'll talk about Idaho now. Jeff Cotton is a wide receiver for the Idaho Vandals. He's going to join us on Thursday, so just want you to be, put that on your radar as well. He's an outstanding wide receiver. I think 18th in the nation in receiving yards and 4th in the country in receptions. And by the way, they got a group of receivers, the Idaho Vandals do. I mean, they have a couple of guys who are absolutely outstanding. And so receptions per game, not receptions on the whole, because they've not maybe played one less game than everybody else.
And he's played one less game than everybody as well. He missed a game earlier this year.
Yeah, so he anyway, he'll be with us on Thursday to talk about this game, an interesting path that he's been on coming out of Arizona high school and then JC and then into Idaho. So we'll have him on. But first, Coulter, let's just hear from Bobby Hauck, the head coach of the Montana Grizzlies, talking broadly just about facing up with the University of Idaho and the problems that they present.
This has been a big game in these parts for decades, for a long time. They're playing well. They had a big win last weekend against Cal Poly. They had a tough loss against Weber State, and they beat Idaho State fairly handily. So they've been playing really well lately. They're really well coached. These coaches at Idaho know what the heck they're doing. So they'll have their team ready. We know that they spent time on us in spring ball and fall camp. So they'll be ready. They'll be well prepared. They'll be ready to go. They'll be fired up to play this weekend in Missoula, and we know that we better be the same.
So there you go. When you look at this football game, Coulter, what do you see?
Well, I think, first of all, the respect from the coaching staff, a lot of times you hear that in the press conferences, and a lot of times it's a pleasantry, and it's just what you're supposed to say. But I know for a fact that Bobby Hauck does have a lot of respect for Idaho's coaching staff, especially because a lot of these guys, there's so much crossover between them.
Obviously Paul Petrino, a Montana guy.
Right? I mean, all these guys are Montana guys, honestly. I mean, Paul Petrino's from, grew up in Butte, played at Helena for his old man, Bob Petrino Sr., who's a coaching legend in Montana. Chris Chinkovich has a ton of crossover, both with Montana. That's the offensive coordinator for Idaho. He has a ton of crossover with both Montana and Bobby Hauck. He was at UNLV before Bobby Hauck was there. Mike Bresky has spent 2 different stints as the defensive coordinator at the University of Montana. People remember Bresky, his first iteration as the DC for Joe Glenn, his second iteration as the DC for Robin Pflugrad. I'll tell you this, Bresky's evolved a ton during his time as a defensive play caller. Under Joe Glenn, it was a lot more simplistic. Simplistic is the wrong word. A lot less risky. And then when Bresky was here under Robin Pflugrad, they were running a ton of stuff. They were blitzing all over the place. A lot of where Ty Gregorak and his blitz schemes come from was him learning under Mike Bresky. And Idaho still looks like that a lot. They're very aggressive in the front 7. But then you look at the rest of the coaching staff, and you got Vernon Smith, who was an all-Big Sky corner at Montana under Bobby Hauck, who's now the cornerbacks coach at the University of Idaho. You got Tony Spencer, who's one of the all-time great receivers in the history of Carroll College, who's the receivers coach there at Idaho. They got Luther Ellis, who was a multiple-time all-pro defensive lineman for the Detroit Lions, and he's the defensive line coach at Idaho. And not only is he the D-line coach, but he's the guy who never stops giving them absolute studs. I mean, he's got 12 kids. 3 of them have already played for Idaho. He really does. He has 12 kids. 3 of them have already played for Idaho. Caden Ellis right now is playing for the Saints. He got drafted last year from Idaho. His younger brother, Christian, is one of Idaho's starting linebackers. I think he's their second leading tackler. And then the youngest, Ellis, once upon a time, was the top-rated defensive line recruit in the entire country. Noah Ellis is his name. And he was once upon a time committed to Alabama. He played for a year, maybe even 2 at Mississippi State, and now he is at the University of Idaho. But this guy's 6'4", 350 pounds. He hasn't quite put it together yet in terms of the production, but he's a 4-star recruit from the SEC playing in the Big Sky Conference. So there's some dudes. There's some coaches, and there's some dudes. They have just had a lot of Idaho's struggles have been widespread and intricate and complicated. There's so many different things you can point to. Mm-hmm. The move up, people now, I've seen this all over Twitter. There was a huge debate this weekend over a bunch of Grizz fans and a bunch of former Grizz players about whether Montana should have or still should move up. And it's an interesting discussion. I think it's one that you and I can have a little bit later on down the road. We've touched on it before, but I think that people look at Boise State and they think, well, that's the best thing that could happen if you're from the West and you move up. And Idaho, that's the worst thing that could happen. Mm-hmm. And people always yell, well, of course Idaho failed at the FBS level. They moved up and joined the Sun Belt. They didn't. They moved up and they joined the I don't even. I think it was.
Was it the WAC?
I think it was the Big West first, and then the Big West went away, and then they were in the WAC, and then the WAC went away because of the rise of the Mountain West, and then Idaho didn't have the standing to be in the Mountain West, and at that point, Boise State had won so much, and Boise had exploded. Mm-hmm. So Big West was what they initially joined, because I always get that confused because there's the Big West and the Great West. But then, the city of Boise had exploded in population. Boise State had made their great run, and Idaho was sort of left in the dust. And, on one hand, you can say, Paul Petrino has been below average as the head coach at Idaho. But he inherited a program that was playing FBS independent. And they had to play just a straight murderer's row to basically keep the athletic department afloat when the WAC disbanded. And then he gets them into the Sun Belt, and that's not a good fit. They're going across the country to play Troy and Arkansas State and Appalachian State, and it's not good. But then with Matt Linehan as their quarterback, they win 9 games and they win a bowl. And you can say, okay, well, it's just the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. And you know me, I'm not a bowl guy. But they won a bowl game at Idaho. Yeah. I mean, they won 9 games in the FBS. I don't care what conference you're in. They did that. Yeah. Right. And then then the return back to the FCS, I think, has had a really detrimental effect on just the mentality of their program. Because I do think they still have a ton of really good guys. I mean, Charles Akanu, who got hurt against Idaho State, he was the guy who was playing buck end, basically following in the footsteps of Caden Ellis. He's an NFL guy. So that means, to me, it shows that you had 2 straight NFL guys at that position. You're recruiting well there. They've had multiple running backs that have gotten sniffs in the league. They have some of their best guys are some of the best guys in the league. They just have a really hard time with the intangible element of the game. They're terrible on the road. They're terrible when it comes down to it, like in close games. They held on for dear life and beat Eastern, but in a close game situation, they blew a 14-point lead against Northern Colorado. So, I mean, they just have a lot of struggles that are outside of just the talent it takes to win football games.
This is a team that's very, very hard to get a grasp of, because they are 4-5 overall. They're 2-3 in Big Sky Conference play. They're 0-4 on the road, but they're 4-1 at home. And their one loss at home was to Weber State in a 41-35 football game. They scored a little bit late there, but they played Weber State really, really well, who's, the number 3 team in the nation right now. So that's Idaho good. Idaho bad, they went on the road and lost to Northern Colorado, one of the 2 worst teams in the Big Sky Conference. If there's such a thing as a bad win, they've got it. A 41-31 nail-biter that was closer than that against Division II Central Washington in the Kibbe Dome. And they have been they got completely blanked, goose egg at Portland State. Didn't score a point against the Portland State Vikings. And, they're coming now off 2 wins, a huge win in their rivalry game against Idaho State, 45-21, and another win at home over Cal Poly, 21-9, where the defense really figured out the triple option in that attack and got two solid wins. But you're right, this is a team that, when it gels, when it plays well, and maybe you could say when the players are invested in what's going on.
And when they're at home.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously the home and away thing is the most stark, part of this. But that's when. But this team has the potential, and not just the potential. They have shown it. The reality of at times being really good. They've also at times been awful.
And I think that just from a personnel standpoint and from what goes into this, I think that there's multiple different deals going on here. First of all, Matt Linehan was a really good quarterback. Matt Linehan's one of the great quarterbacks in Idaho history, and they have great quarterback lineage. I mean, Doug Nussmeier and Scott Linehan, Matt Linehan's father, who's now been a longtime assistant coach in the NFL, and John Freeze. I mean, Doug Nussmeier and John Freeze both won the Peyton Award. I mean, they were some of the best quarterbacks in the history of the Big Sky Conference. Mm-hmm. Idaho was the cream of the crop in the Big Sky in the 80s. And then when Dennis Erickson left and John L. Smith took over, they were still a competitive program. And then when they moved up, that was one of the things It sort of cleared the way for Montana to rise. But Matt Linehan was an outstanding quarterback, one of the all-time leaders in every single major passing category in Idaho history. So they haven't been able to replace him, and they've tried to replace him with Mason Petrino. And Petrino, he takes all sorts of heat, and it reeks of nepotism as being Paul Petrino's son. He looks nowhere close to a D1 athlete because he's tiny. He doesn't throw the ball like a D1 quarterback would. But I actually give him a lot of credit. He's a really competitive guy.
He's tough.
I mean,
maybe no surprise.
He has been one of their issues, but there's more issues than just that. I guess what I'm getting at is he's not the sole scapegoat. I think the other thing worth noting about this Idaho team, though, is I do think that they're going to have it's going to take a couple years for them to really transition into recruiting guys who want to play in the Big Sky. But when they play teams where they know that this is a rival, where they know that this is the team from down the road, or there's going to be fans from this team at our place. I mean, they blitzed Eastern, and they held on late, and Eric Berrier helped Eastern come back to make that an 8-point game. But they still took care of business when Eastern was the number 11 team in the country. They destroyed Idaho State, a team that destroyed them last year in Pocatello. Scored 3 defensive touchdowns in that game, and they overwhelmed Idaho State. And now they have their third rivalry game in Montana. And so it's going to be a tough task for them to come here, but I do expect them to have an inspired effort, and I do expect them to play better than maybe we think that they are. I think the last thing worth noting, the Sun Belt was such a run-heavy conference that had a ton of teams, not a ton, but there's only a couple handfuls of option teams in all of college football. The only conference, in my mind, off the top of my head, I can think of that has multiple option teams is the Sun Belt. So this Idaho team has been designed to stop run-heavy teams. You look at their schedule, who they played well against. I mean, Eastern, that was a rivalry game, so I think you got to give that factor in. But when you talk about they played well against Weber State, they didn't play well against Portland State, but Portland State's been good on the road. But they took away Idaho State's run game and made them one-dimensional and then just messed with Matt Struck. That's how they're able to get those defensive touchdowns. And then they smashed against Cal Poly last week. So I think that the way that they're built personnel-wise also just indicates where they came from. They have to adjust to be able to compete in this league, and I think so much of it is just mental. They just have to find guys that want to play in the Big Sky.
It's difficult to be in the brackish waters of guys who came to play in the FBS and are now playing in the FCS, and in a conference that they're very, very unfamiliar with. When many of them had come thinking, okay, it's Idaho, but we're playing in the Sun Belt, where a lot of these guys sort of regionally came from. Louisiana, Arkansas, various places like that. Pretty interesting, the dynamics that are at work there. By the way, as we know, the Petrino family with roots, from the Montana family, it continues on to this generation. Mason Petrino, his twin sister Anne Marie, who is obviously Paul's daughter, is a softball player at the University of Montana. So she's a Grizzly on the softball team there. So a pretty interesting dynamic there. And then, of course, Mike, who we just both think very highly of, Mike Petrino, who's the nephew, I believe, right? Nephew of Paul, is on the Lady Grizz coaching staff with Shannon Swain, and he does a great job there too. So it's just a pretty remarkable group, and they have their fingers everywhere. But there'll be no love lost on Saturday, that can be sure. When you talk about Idaho versus Montana in any sport, but football particularly. So, football. I mean, maybe basketball particularly, frankly, but both of them.
We've talked about so much this year in the NFL how there's been such a lack of investment in offensive and defensive lines, especially offensive lines, for a lot of the teams that have taken steps back or that are just truly bad. I think that same theory trickles down into college football, and it trickles down into the Big Sky Conference too. And you can point to lack of talent here, lack of talent there. But inexperience and just lack of talent kills you on the fronts at this level too. And I think that's one thing you can point to. That's not why Idaho's bad. Idaho's good on their fronts. Their offensive line's pretty good, and their defensive line is their front seven is good, really good actually. I mean, I would say top half of the league. It's the opposite. It's ironic because you'd think that they'd have such an athleticism advantage dropping down from the FBS, and that's where they're weak. Lloyd Hightower's a good corner. Besides that, they don't have corners that can hang with at this level. That's where they get torched. And that's going to be, to me, one of the keys of the game on Saturday.
I agree with you. I think Idaho's going to be up for this game.
So is Montana.
And prepared. especially with what happened in Idaho, not just the loss, but guys being really surprised by, they didn't understand, many of the guys on that team, what that rivalry really was about, and the number of Montana
thousands of Grizz fans showed up, right? And
it was the best, the biggest environment, maybe not the best for them, and they get absolutely housed, in Idaho. You can be sure the Grizzlies will be up for this football game as well. I wonder, though, if there's a chance that you're up for it, and then all of a sudden, this Idaho has never played at Washington Grizzly Stadium since they've been back,
right?
And so
it was the first time these two teams have played in Missoula since 2003,
right? So even with that, there's not really an understanding, I guess, of what that environment is going to be like, and I think it will be an interesting watch to see how they react and respond to that, because it can go one of two ways, it seems to me. Stu Tell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to hear from Paul Caputo, who writes for sportslogos.net. As you may have heard, a brand new logo. In fact, many of them are floating around Missoula now. The Missoula Paddleheads, the new baseball team name and logo for the Pioneer League team here in town. And so people, trying to kind of adjust to that, I think, a little bit, trying to figure out what that, where they're at with all that. But this is a guy who writes about these things for a living, so maybe he can give us some insight that is maybe out of town, I guess, what he thinks about it. So we'll see. I don't know what he's going to say. This is not a plant, people. We just thought, hey, maybe we should talk to somebody who does this kind of stuff, who's interested in this. So we'll talk to Paul here in just a moment. Before we go, though, a couple things. I want to remind you, we're going to once again be giving you the word of the day. Win yourself a keg and a kegerator. How great is that? Keg from Great Burn Brewing and a kegerator from Fred's Appliance. So we'll give you the word of the day to text in as we go. But right now, we want to make everything you eat taste great. And Coulter and I, we don't have that ability. We're no good at this. Coulter, give them the big one today. Give them the big one today. We're going to give you some Alpine Touch. Not just some, but a lot of it. It's the 4 big mountain flavors from Alpine Touch. This is the prize pack right here, the Grand Slam package. Alpine Touch gives you the original spice, which is still, it's just an all-timer good, but you can fill this thing up probably with whatever you would like. You call in right now, 329-1899. We're going to send you a 4-pack of the big Alpine Touch spices right to your door.
Grand Slam package right now. Go to alpinetouch.com. You can order this. Make sure to use the code ESPN10. Get 10% off any of your orders. These are great for holiday gifts, great for tailgating, great for anybody, anywhere. This stuff, I don't care who you are. If you get this for Christmas, you're going to be happy. It's going to last you a long time. It's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. And right now, we'll give it to you. Give us a call, 329-1899. We got this Grand Slam, 4 jars of big flavor for you. Be sure to go alpinetouch.com for all your holiday shopping needs and all your tailgating needs as well as football season winds down. So give us a call right now. First caller, give your name, address to David in the back, and he will get you an Alpine Touch sent straight to your door. Alpine Touch, Montana Special Spice.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
We combine quality ingredients with home-style recipes to create the Montana Club's fall comfort food menu. Savor our tender boneless beef short rib or caramelized brandy apple pork shank. Dig into our classic savory chicken pot pie or fall for our zesty skillet lasagna. Top things off with our creamy pumpkin skillet a la mode. Scratch-made comfort food that's as real as it gets. Served 11:30 to close at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Corona and High Country Jerky sounds so good. I think I'll stop by Town Pump on my way home and grab me a 12-pack of Corona for only $14.99 and some High Country Jerky for $7.99. It's always quick and easy, and there's a Town Pump right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road.
Providing long-term care for someone in need is a labor of love, but it is a labor. Time apart is healthy and necessary both for the caregiver and the person receiving care. It allows each a respite, time to relax and recharge. If you're a long-term caregiver, visit respite.mt.gov for more information. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Brought to you by the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services.
You know what they say about the wheels on the bus?
Round and round.
On Mountain Line, they're not the only thing going round and round through town. So are all of Missoula's top businesses and brands. Down Higgins and Broadway, through the North Side, South Hills, even Mullen Road and East Missoula. Sponsor a billboard ad on the Mountain Line and come face to face with tens of thousands of potential customers every week. With 6 clean new electric buses, there's never been a better time to be seen on the bus. Roll your brand round and round, all through town on the Mountain Line.
Round and round.
Call 721-6800 today.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. After months of speculation and anticipation, Missoula's minor league baseball team has a new name. After 20 years as the Osprey, the Garden City's Pioneer League affiliate, will be known as the Paddleheads. The team still plans on wearing Osprey and Missoula Timberjacks gear throughout the upcoming season.
The Class AA high school football playoffs basically went chalk in the first round, with every team with a better record and all but one higher seed moving on. Missoula Sentinel posted a 45-7 win over Billings Skyview and will play Billings Senior Friday in Missoula. The other quarterfinal matchups feature Kalispell Glacier at Butte, Helena Capital at Billings West, and Helena High at Bozeman. Missoula Big Sky saw their season end 27-3 at Bozeman, and Missoula Hellgate saw its season end with a 41-13 loss at Senior.
In Class A, 3 Southwestern A teams are among the Final 8, including Hamilton, who will host Billings Central in a rematch of last year's state title game. Frenchtown posted a 34-7 win over Whitefish to move into the quarterfinals and a matchup with the Eastern A top seed Miles City. Dillon will host Havre and Laurel host Libby in the other 2 quarterfinals. Okay, I'll do it, sure. In Class B, Missoula Loyola is into the round of 8 after posting a 20-0 win over Huntley Project. The Rams will take on Manhattan, and Florence will play top-seeded Fairfield after a dominant 59-6 win over Shepherd.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
City's got a new team name, new logos. Everybody's got their thoughts and opinions on it, but maybe we should ask somebody who, has seen a couple of these in his day. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. We go out to the Rankage Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in Paul Caputo, who writes for sportslogos.net. He's written a story today, in fact, about the Missoula Paddleheads and the new logo, the new name, and all of that stuff. He joins us now. Paul, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
Guys, I'm super happy to be here. I really appreciate it.
Well,
I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. I mean, I would think you're happy to talk about this stuff because you do this stuff. You write about it all the time. When I mean, let me ask you this: there's so many logos, and people are really, really interested, and some people really invested in their team, their town, and that kind of thing. What got you into this on this sort of sports bent from a logo, through a logo filter?
Well, I'm a Phillies fan. And, all through the mid-2000s, the Phillies were doing really well. And then with Ryan Howard's Achilles heel exploding in 2010, I was just like, man, I'm going to have to find something else to occupy my baseball mind here. And right around that time, the same design firm, actually, that did the Paddleheads, Brandiose, did a team, the Phillies AAA affiliate called the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. And I thought, what in the world is an iron pig? Like, what does that mean, right? And so I looked into that, and it turns out the iron pigs were sort of a play off of the pig iron that they forge in the steel mills of eastern Pennsylvania. And I thought, wow, that's, there's a neat story here. And so it got me thinking, about like, what do all these sort of increasingly wacky minor league nicknames mean? And I developed a theory that you could understand America by learning why minor league baseball teams have the names that they have. And so I started writing for sports logos. I started writing a series called The Story Behind the Nickname. And I would just call teams up, and I'd be like, man, why are you guys called the Chihuahuas? Why are you the Rumble Ponies? That sort of thing. So, and I've learned an awful lot about America that way.
Two-part question then. What is the most fitting logo you've come across? Which one fits the community and reveals the most about that place? And what's the weirdest one you've come across?
Oh, man, the weirdest one. Actually, I mentioned the iron pigs. I mean, I think that's a great one because it's, this sort of metallic, grimacing pig, and it just represents to me the steel mill culture of eastern Pennsylvania so well. I think so that one to me is probably the most fitting. It's the one that sort of got me going down that path. I think the weirdest one has to be another grandiose one. The guys who did the paddleheads, have done so much work in minor league baseball. And one of the ones they did, they're actually defunct now. They just played their last season. The New Orleans Baby Cakes, whose logo is the little toy baby that you put in a king cake in New Orleans. And, there's all these sort of traditions associated with that. So for 3 years, they were the New Orleans Baby Cakes. And, they had this sort of like creepy, grimacing baby as their logo. So that one I would say is the weirdest of the ones I've encountered.
Paul Caputo joining us. He writes for sportslogos.net. He's just done a story about the Missoula Paddleheads, their new logo, their new team name, and all of that. Paul, it's interesting, especially in minor league baseball. There's a great tradition now of finding some pretty obscure names, some of that by necessity because of copyright rules and that sort of thing, but also some of it just because, teams, places want to be unique and so forth and so on. When you saw the new logo and the new team name, what were your reactions to it, not being a Missoulian or a Western Montanan and not maybe having necessarily any tie to the Osprey as such?
Sure. Well, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head as someone who's not from the area, and I'm not necessarily even familiar with Osprey in particular. I didn't have any connection at all to the team. It was it's a classic logo. It was around for 20 years. Obviously that team was firmly entrenched in minor league baseball tradition. But Osprey meant nothing to me, right? Like I didn't have a connection to it. And one of the things I know the team was trying to do here was to do something that was pertinent to Missoula, but also that it had a more sort of national appeal. And I saw that they were tweeting that they had already sold merchandise to 7 different countries already, that sort of thing. So this one, when I saw this one, I love moose in general. I live in Colorado, right? So every once in a while, you get lucky enough to actually see one. And I went to a conference once where there was one walking down the street, which I understand happened in Missoula as they were trying to come up with this name. So my reaction was that it felt so appropriate to the Missoula community, but also I can absolutely see, there's going to be a more national appeal. There's going to be people who just sort of love moose in general and are going to be, interested in this team and this logo for that reason.
Did you know what a paddlehead was before this landed on your radar?
No, and in fact, I had to go look it up afterwards, and I still am not finding like a ton of references to moose being paddleheads, right? Like I think, but this is another thing that I think Grandiose does really well, and that minor league baseball in general is doing really well, is coming up with, they're not just going to be the Missoula Moose, they're going to be the Missoula Paddleheads, right? And it makes you think, and it makes you sort of delve into what that means, and it tells a little bit of a story, and it's got the double entendre with the sort of river culture there. Another team that they did this with was in Amarillo, Texas, the Amarillo Sod Poodles. And I had never heard the term sod poodle before, but a sod poodle was a prairie dog. So, I think this is something that teams are doing because it invites questions and it invites, sort of further explanation of like, okay, well, what the heck's a paddlehead? And then when they had the opportunity to create the sort of the bat with the paddle on the end of it to celebrate the river culture there, that was clever, and it was I think that came together really well.
There is no question that we should do away with prairie dogs in general in the lexicon, and it should just be sod poodle. I mean, that is obvious.
I think we can all agree on that. I'm with you on that one for sure.
It was interesting because if you take a look, and actually it's interesting to look at your website, thesportslogos.net, because you have the new logos and the old logos up against each other. And if you do look at the Missoula Osprey logo, like you can see the dated nature of it, and it's sort of interesting. Like at some point, logos cross some threshold where they become classics, but up until that, they just become dated. And I don't know when it happens that it becomes classic or what needs to take place, but it hadn't happened yet for the Osprey. And I had been in favor for quite a while of a logo overhaul of some sort, and I didn't realize the extent to which they would do it. Obviously, with new ownership, I think a lot of people here have had a pretty negative reaction. You may be aware too that there is an Osprey that lives at the stadium, so that was a big part of the whole sort of ongoing conversation on this. The paddlehead, when I first heard the name, and I still am like, maybe, but the logos to me they came off to me very, very well, and like you said, have a much broader appeal than what the Osprey had, what they were working with before.
Well, the Moose logo, obviously, he's got a lot of personality. He really does. It really is inviting. So well done. It's a professional, engaging logo. One of the things Brandiose does in particular is that they try to tell a story with their suite of logos. And one of the things you may have noticed, like the Osprey, right? They had one, maybe two logos. This suite with the paddle heads, you've got like 9 or 10 logos, right? And so there's a whole sort of narrative. There's a whole story there. And yeah, you may have. That's definitely the arc with these. I think every minor league baseball team that unveils a new logo, there's a negative reaction because it's different. There's a sort of nostalgic connection to the previous logo. There's people who have a lot of Osprey gear, I'm sure, who are disappointed now that's out of date. But then when you look at some of these teams that came about relatively recently, within the last 5 to 10 years, that already feel so firmly entrenched, right? Like the Richmond Flying Squirrels, the El Paso Chihuahuas. Some of these teams that have these sort of wacky names. There's one team that hasn't even played a game yet, the Rocket City Trash Pandas, right? And everyone loves their logo, and they were the Mobile Bay Bears. No one could tell you who the Mobile Bay Bears were, but everyone knows the Rocket City Trash Pandas. So I think that, there's an arc, there's a curve where people have to sort of get adjusted to the new team. But I think having a contemporary, professionally designed logo is going to be better for the team in general and better for the community. That's not to say that it wasn't a great brand, that Osprey wasn't appropriate to the community, and for a logo that was designed in 1999, that it didn't have a certain amount of staying power. I know that they were talking about, just updating the Osprey logo and keeping the same team name, but when they got into conversations about it, it became a question of, we're just gonna completely overhaul this and make it something brand new.
Grade this thing for us. What would you give this, just from a broad logo perspective?
So give it a letter grade? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. However you want to rank it.
Scale, whatever you want.
I'm gonna use a baseball euphemism for it. I think they knocked it out of the park. I think when I interviewed the front office, I spoke with Matt Ellis and Taylor Rush at the team, and they said, we're enlisting the help of a design firm that has a tried and true playbook in terms of creating identities that are appropriate and fun and engaging. And they brought in some heavy hitters who are really good at what they do and who really have sort of redefined the culture of minor league baseball, right? And so they brought in professionals to do a really good job, and I think they did do exactly what they asked them to do. So I would, I give them an A. I think they hit it out of the park. I think it's, there's going to be an adjustment period for people like me who follow, all of the minor league brands. There's a certain familiarity to it, right? Like there's a certain visual aesthetic that Brandiose has that you're sort of like, there was a certain expectation that it would, that they would have a character and it would have, a certain sort of grimace about it. And one of the things Brandiose is famous for that they didn't do with this logo is they almost always have a character swinging a thing, right? So like the Eugene Emeralds have a Sasquatch character who's swinging a pine tree, sort of in the spirit of the old San Diego Padres Friar. So they didn't do that, right? Like they don't have a moose swinging a baseball bat in this one, which some people are like, hey, where's the swinging character logo? But, in general, they brought in Brandiose to do a certain thing, and Brandiose did exactly what they asked them to do. So I think, for someone like me who follows minor league baseball overall, yeah, there was a certain expectation that this is what it would look like. But if you're a fan of the Missoula baseball team here, and this is all hyper local and brand new, I think that that you've been served well by that does this, that does a good job of this.
Paul, we certainly appreciate you being with us. Paul Caputo, he writes for sportslogos.net. You can go read his story now. He's also written a book, The Story Behind the Nickname. So you can go check that out. And you want to get in and do this real deep, you go ahead. Paul, best of luck with your plastic batting helmet collection there. We hope that you get them all done. We certainly appreciate your time with us here today, all right?
I really hope that the paddleheads have the ice cream helmet Sunday, because it's going to be a great addition to the collection.
No doubt. Paul, thanks so much, man. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks, guys. Good luck.
There you go. Paul Caputo joining us. Tutel Nuanez, ESPN Radio. Quick break. We'll come back. Montana State, they're at Northern Colorado. What's Jeff Choate have to say about it? Well, naturally, quite a bit. Alpine Touch has been part of the fabric of Montana for more than 60 years. Decades ago, Russell Street started selling his touch of magic in whitefish. Years later, Alpine Touch's all-purpose seasoning remains a favorite. It's tailgating season, and there's no better way to spice up your grill before a Grizz game than with Alpine Touch. Go to alpinetouch.com now and use the checkout code ESPN10 for a 10% discount on your order. Alpine Touch is here to keep your mouth watering all football season. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
The biggest season in sports is shifting into overdrive, and the Desperado Sports Tavern has the fuel you need to make it to the finish line. By now, you've heard that the Despo serves the best wings around, but did you know they have a full menu with burgers, nachos, chicken strips, sandwiches, cheese sticks, and even steaks? Fill your tank, then wash it down with an ice-cold beverage or two. Keep your head in the game with 32 HD TVs and room for the whole crew. The Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
From well-loved characters like Charlie Brown and the Gruffalo to a wizard kitten and robots saving whales, the Kidamatic Film Festival will feature family-friendly films to inspire kids of all ages, November 14th through the 17th. Hosted by the Roxy Theater and Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, this festival includes 4 days of fun activities, imaginative presentations, and over 25 short and feature-length films, screening November 14th through the 17th at the Roxy. To learn more about the Kidamatic Film Festival, go to kidamatic.org.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Hey, it's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. How we doing? Thanks for letting us be with you. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast. The Tutel and Nuanez podcast brought to you thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Golter, Montana State on the road in northern Colorado. They had a 42-0 demolition of Southern Utah in the first half of the football game. End up winning 42-7 in a snooze fest, which is a good thing if you're a Montana State fan in general. They go on the road to the other worst team in the Big Sky Conference, Northern Colorado. Let's start just by hearing Jeff Cho.
Isn't Idaho State the worst team in the Big Sky Conference now? They lost to Southern Utah and Northern Colorado back-to-back weeks. It's pretty hard to say that they're not.
Okay, well, regardless, throw them all in there.
There's more bad teams this year than there has been in a little while. I'll tell you that.
Here's Jeff Choate talking about one of them. That's Northern Colorado.
A big win for them on the road last week at Idaho State, and create, I think, a lot of momentum for them. I really like, I like the Nip kid. Their quarterback is a really good player. I really like this kid. I think he's a big, strong kid. He's an accurate passer. He's got some good targets to throw to. They have a bounce down from Wyoming, the Milo Hall kid, that little running back. He's a really good inside zone runner. That's what they do with him. When they had the track kid, they set up about 5 or 6 vertical shots a game to him. Now it's more similar probably to what we saw against North Dakota. A lot of RPO, inside zone, some tempo. Those are the types of things that you see, and I think the Nip kid does a really nice job of operating it. Primary targets, number 10, the Fairman kid, I think he's their true speed guy. They do a nice job of creating matchups because they'll move their speed guys into the slot, and if you play quarters coverage on them, you're basically going to get a safety man-to-man on their speed guy, and they've taken advantage of everybody they played in that regard. Other targets, 13 and 17, some taller guys on the perimeter that they use in a variety of ways. Defensively, multiple fronts. Kind of depends on the style that you're playing, whether you're going to see the 3 down front or the 4 down front. As they settle into the game, you see more 4 down. About your standard 30% blitz team, more fire zone, not a ton of zero coverage. Although if you do get into heavier sets, 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, they will get in and crowd the box and play zero coverage. And so there's some opportunities, I think, there. I really like the Gonzalez kid, 53. I think he's got a high motor, one of their best interior defensive linemen. Senior captain, the Nelson kid at linebacker, number 29. You can tell he's the leader of that group. Everything kind of goes through him in the communication. And then number 5, I think he had a pick 6 and actually had 2 interceptions, a pick 6, and forced fumble against Idaho State. So he had a huge game last week, but he shows up consistently on tape. He's a 6'1" senior corner, really good athlete, and is a guy you got to be aware of all the time. They've been explosive in the return game, and we got to go down there and again have that one game at a time mentality and go prepare to play our best game against this group.
Do you think other coaches listen to Jeff Choate's press conference to see what he thinks about them?
No doubt. I think coaches, they say they don't listen to outside noise. They listen to each other.
Yes.
I think that's why, okay, I'm not sure Choate listens to anybody else. I'm serious. He made such a comment during the thing. We'll play it for you later on this week. He made a comment. He said, I truly don't listen to outside noise. He goes, I truly didn't know we were ranked in the top 25 until Bill put the stats on my desk before this press conference. Said, I had no idea. He said, I truly know myself well enough that if I listened to all the outside noise, including when people said I was doing a great job and including when people said I was doing a poor job, do you have any idea how miserable my life would be? And it's the truth, especially if you're a person that's like him.
Yeah.
He already thinks himself, he thinks harder about everything than anybody in the league. But that's the thing that I thought was interesting because
which can be good or not good.
There used to be a conference call with all 13 head coaches in the Big Sky Conference. It's the whole entire impetus for why we started Skyline Sports, because I had 10 minutes on the phone with every dude in the league. So now I can get every story I ever wanted because I can hash them all out by talking to every guy back to back to back to back. They got rid of the conference call. Choate was the one that spearheaded getting rid of it because Montana schools get so much media coverage. They don't need it. But I know that the other coaches, like Bruce Barnum's dying to be on this show because he doesn't get any interviews from anybody else.
Give us a call.
No doubt. But I guess what I'm getting at, though, is I know that coaches used to sit on there and listen to each other talk.
Yeah.
And I just don't know why you wouldn't.
Sure. You get a little check-in.
I know that there's coaches around the state that listen to our show when we have other coaches on. They think that is a great resource for them.
When it comes to this football game, Jeff Choate did what he does, and what all coaches seem to do now, is you outline in the best possible way the strengths as you can find them of everything that the other team does well, basically to convince your team and probably yourself to some extent that this is another dangerous team that you got to go up against and you got to be ready to go and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that this is another game that Montana State should go down and hammer Northern Colorado, and to some extent, to me, needs to.
Northern Colorado is a great example. The Big Sky Conference is a striking example of how there's so much that goes into playing winning football that has almost nothing to do with talent. And Portland State and Sac State have been such a great example of that for so long. The intangible elements of what does it mean? What are you playing for? What does it take to win? I mean, there's been so many dudes at Montana and Montana State that could never get recruited anywhere else in the country, but by the time they're juniors and seniors, they're the best players in the league because of what it means to them and the dedication and the commitment they had to the program. Like Michael Walker, the corner that Choate talked about there, he's way better than any corner the Cats got on their team. He would be the best corner in the state of Montana, period. I mean, he's a 6'1", 195-pound dude who's a ball hawk. He's the only dude in the league that's been multiple-time Defensive Player of the Week in the league this year. But that's not all it takes to win.
Right.
And that's where Northern Colorado's been. I mean, here's the deal. In this decade, Northern Colorado's had 3 straight quarterbacks that are going to the pros. Jacob Nipp's going to the NFL. Kyle Sloter, before him, he's a backup for Kyler Murray with the Arizona Cardinals. Seth Lobato, he played in Miami for about 5 years. 3 straight. How many times have they had a winning record in league play? 0. None. So I think but that's the whole point, is Northern Colorado has never and probably will never win the league. The illusion of winning is going to elude them forever. But they can beat anybody on any given day, and that's why you have to do exactly what you just outlined.
Stu Tillman and Wannis, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Plenty more coming from this, week and these games coming up throughout the course of the week. But we turn our attention now to basketball. It's the opening night of the college basketball season. We'll talk about it. Both Montana and Montana State. The Grizzlies open tomorrow. The Cats open tonight. We're going to talk about both of those games and just in general, lay it out all there for you as we get going. And they're tipping it off the big-time level as well. Michigan State, Kentucky tonight, and right now Kansas Duke, 5 o'clock. How great is that? Hey, boys and girls, it's wintertime coming up. I guess it's sort of wintertime now. Go get your car taken care of. One way to do that, get it detailed. You think that's crazy? It's not. Shine Auto Detailing. Shine Auto Detailing online at MissoulaAutoDetailing.com. You go, you get your car cleaned, all that stuff. You go, well, why? Because it's just going to get dirty and all that. What are they throwing down? Salt, dirt, everything else. Shine Auto Detailing, they're going to take care of that. On the bottom of their car, they're going to put a cover and a repellent to make sure that none of the salt and the dirt, none of that stuff affects your vehicle. Cars wear down quick. Trucks wear down quick in the state of Montana driving around in the winter months. You go to Shine Auto Detailing, you get that thing taken care of and make sure that it is absolutely ready to go for the winter and that your car isn't going to wear down. If you go right now, you can also get a free headlight restoration, $75 value for free. There's no confusing pricing. All the prices are listed clearly on the website, MissoulaAutoDetailing.com. Go check them out right now.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Help protect our community from prescription drug misuse, abuse, and overdose on National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. This Saturday, you can turn in your unused or expired medications at the Grizz game. Just look for the DEA booth at the parking lot near the entrance of the stadium. If you can't make it to the game, go to MissoulaCounty.us for a list of Dropbox locations in Missoula. This event is brought to you by Curry Health Center, Safe Kids Missoula at Foundation for Community Health, and the Prescription Drug Task Force, a coalition of Missoula City County Health Department.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to BorgenProject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
From well-loved characters like Charlie Brown and the Gruffalo to a wizard kitten and robots saving whales, the Kidamatic Film Festival will feature family-friendly films to inspire kids of all ages, November 14th through the 17th. Hosted by the Roxy Theater and Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, this festival includes 4 days of fun activities, imaginative presentations, and over 25 short and feature-length films, screening November 14th through the 17th at the Roxy. To learn more about the Kidamatic Film Festival, go to kidamatic.org.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. After months of speculation and anticipation, Missoula's minor league baseball team has a new name. After 20 years as the Osprey, the Garden City's Pioneer League affiliate, will be known as the Missoula Paddleheads. The team still plans on wearing Osprey and Missoula Timberjacks gear throughout the upcoming season.
The Class AA high school football playoffs basically went chalk in the first round, with every team with a better record and all but one higher seed moving on. Missoula Sentinel posted a 45-7 win over Billings Skyview and will play Billings Senior Friday in Missoula. Senior ended Hellgate's season with a 41-13 win. The other quarterfinals matchups feature Kalispell Glacier at Butte, Helena Capital at Billings West, and Helena High at Bozeman. The Hawks ended Missoula Big Sky season with a 27-3 win in Bozeman.
In Class A, 3 Southwestern A teams are among the final 8, including Hamilton, who will host Billings Central in a rematch of last year's state title game on Saturday. Frenchtown posted a 34-7 win over Whitefish to move into the quarterfinals in a matchup with the Eastern A's top seed Miles City. Dillon will host Havre, while Laurel hosts Libby in the other 2 quarterfinals.
And in Class B, Missoula Loyola is in the round of 8 after posting a 20-0 win over Huntley Project in Warden on Saturday. The Rams will take on Manhattan, who beat Loyola 26-14 in Missoula earlier this season.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
so it begins, Coulter. Kansas playing basketball right now. How about that against the Duke Blue Devils? Tipping it off. And that game we will have for you as soon as we're done here. We'll send you out for that game, and it's a doubleheader because after that, it's Kentucky versus Michigan State. I love this, Coulter. This you'll never get in college football. This is one thing you do have to like about college basketball. The first night of the season, 3 versus 4 and 1 versus 2 in the nation. That's fantastic. It's good for the fans. A great way to get things started. And, see what you got. Michigan State never been number 1 before, ever, and they are right now. It's Tutel Nuanez.
That's true.
Number 1 to start a season, excuse me. Number 1 preseason poll. Let me be very, very clear about that. They have been number 1 a bunch of times in their history. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you want to call, 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangish Brothers RV phone line. And you can also give us a shout on the social medias at 1029 ESPN in Twitter and Instagram, at Gus Tutel at Skyline Sports on Twitter as well. If you want to listen live, you can do that at the website, 1029ESPN.com. Stream brought to us by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. So, Coulter, we'll touch on those games a little bit. Want to remind everybody, coming up in about 30 minutes from now, I will be reading a poem. It is the payment that I owe for the Packers' loss on Sunday to Sean Rainey's Los Angeles Chargers. We had a bet on that game. The winner got to write a poem that the loser had to read on air. I will be paying this debt in about 30 minutes, a poem from the great and wondrous artist of our day, Sean Rainey. So stick around for that. We also, in this segment, going to be giving you the word of the day to win a keg from Great Burn Brewing and a kegerator from Fred's Appliance. We're giving that away on Friday, so check that out here. And remember, go check out the social medias, which I referenced earlier at 1029 ESPN. Tickets to the Battle for the Little Brown Stein, Grizzlies Idaho tickets, going to be given away there this week. We'll have details forthcoming on that. Okay, Coulter, we got all these games going on, Kansas, Duke, and so forth. But right now, Montana State getting ready to open their season in Logan, Utah, against the Utah State Aggies. And Utah State, boys and girls, in the AP Top 25, 17th. In the coaches poll, 19th. This is a top 20 team in the nation, Utah State right now. And Danny Sprinkle, baptism by fire. I mean, this guy's been around, obviously, for a very long time, playing for Montana State, coaching a bunch of different places. But as a head coach, first game, go on the road to Utah State, one of the great mid-major programs in America. And welcome to the 2019-2020 basketball season, Danny Sprinkle and the Montana State Bobcats, right?
I mean, no, Tyler. I mean, this Montana State opened up against Utah State last year, and it was an incredibly deflating, I think, eye-opening loss for Montana State. They lost by 30 on their home floor.
In Bozeman,
they got absolutely routed. And Utah State, by all accounts, is even better. I mean, Sam Merrill's back for his senior year. He's on the Wooden Award watch list. He's a tremendous guard, one of the smoothest guards you'll find. The other name that I think people will notice is Alfonso Anderson. Alfonso Anderson was a big-time recruit out of Garfield High School in Tacoma, Washington for Travis DeCuire. And Alfonso Anderson came to University of Montana, and he had a little bit of a lingering knee injury, and there was some dispute on whether he should redshirt or not. And I can't remember if he wanted to and they didn't want him to, or if it was the other way around. He wanted to. I don't know. Whatever happened, there was a fracturing in the communication. Alfonso Anderson left right away, went to North Idaho College, and now he's at Utah State. But he's a guy that Montana could use right now for sure. But he's a very, very good player, a 6'6" guy who is sort of a combo forward. He can facilitate. He can score on the block. So at Utah State, they have a lot of talent, and this is going to be a tough first game for Danny Sprinkle and the Bobcats. And I think that's going to be a tough non-conference just in general. They have so many new guys. Harold Frey is obviously the main returner. Lynn Ricketts, another guy that got significant minutes a year ago. But anybody that is a returner, they're going to have to learn how to play without Tyler Hall. And anybody that is a newcomer, they're going to have to learn how to play Division I basketball. And they're all going to have to learn how to play under a first-time head coach. So I think that Montana State's probably in for a lot of growing pains. I will not take anything out of this game tonight. I expect Montana State to get destroyed, and I think that that's fine. I don't think they should take anything out of it either. I think they should just be like, hey, straight up, this is the best team Montana State's going to play this year. So they should just take it for what it's worth and try to get better through the lens of themselves rather than saying, hey, if we go lose in Logan by 25-30, you can't make too big of a deal out of that.
Right. This game at 8 o'clock, by the way, it is on Root Sports, so if you're looking for it on television, you can see that. But Harold Frey, obviously, the straw that stirs the drink for this team, and the senior point guard who's just been absolutely outstanding, especially last season, frankly, and expect him to be that as well. You get a guy like Layden Ricketts who can really fill it up on the outside, and you throw in a couple of guys. Zeke Quinlan, I thought, had some very nice
flashes,
minutes at times last year, and certainly has the physical assets and some of the skill to be able to play at this level. But your point is absolutely well taken. How many guys need to play together for the first time and really play for real for the first time in some of their cases in the course of their career? Let's hear from Danny Sprinkle a little bit here. Again, back at his alma mater, his first head coaching job at Montana State, where he was such a great basketball player, discussing what it's like to be back in Bozeman.
The most surreal thing is just thinking that it was 20 years ago. I mean, it feels like literally it was yesterday. And, you're walking down the hall, you're seeing, a picture of Nico, or, you just see and you just think how much stuff has happened in that 20 years. And that's the most surreal part of it. It's awesome walking those halls, and walking into Brick Breeden every day, even when it's empty, and just kind of walking through there.
And that is kind of a cool thing for him, because he can walk through an empty Brick Breeden field house and it's never empty to him. He always has the history, the memories. You can stand on spots of the floor and remember when this happened, remember when that happened. And I think that is, there isn't a lot of that's available for Montana State men's basketball. And so for him to be the guy that can bring that, I think is an important factor that really not a lot of guys have ever been able to. And so we'll see if he can convert that, particularly in the recruiting trail, into getting guys there. Speaking of recruiting, you got to sell them on the place on both the town and the school. This is what he has to say about MSU.
For a college environment, I think it's a tough place to be. If you want a complete college atmosphere and experience, I'd put Montana State up with anybody in the country.
Skiing and burgers? Boom. I mean, come on. What else do you need?
Montana State's roster already has a gigantic international feel, and they haven't even played a game under Danny Sprinkle. In their exhibition game, I think they rolled out one starter from America. I mean, they're playing multiple guys from London, multiple guys from Canada. Obviously, Harold Frey is from Norway. They got guys on the roster from Germany. They got guys on the roster from, Miles City, Montana. So they have a guy from Spain. They have a guy from Austria. So it's already an international feel, and to me, that's the right way to do it. Montana State's been trying for 20 years to be like Montana. That's not what they need to do. They need to try to be like Montana. They need to try to be like South Dakota State, or they need to try to be like a Midwest team. Recruit to Bozeman. Recruit guys that don't mind living in the mountains. I mean, Harold Frey is not freaking out over the winter in Bozeman, Montana, because he's from Oslo, Norway. Kids from Los Angeles freak out over the winter in Bozeman, Montana. They do. They do. So, it's interesting. What you said, I think, is a great point, too. I don't know how the Danny Sprinkle hire is going to work out. I like Danny Sprinkle personally a lot. I think he's a very nice guy. I think he's a very charismatic dude. I think he's very, very, very driven and focused to win at his alma mater. But I think it was absolutely the hire that you had to make, because he's the only guy. Montana State hasn't been in the NCAA tournament since 1996. Right. He's the only dude from that squad that's still involved in basketball on a coaching level. I mean, Nico Harrison, who we referenced there, he's an executive at Nike. He's not trying to become a head coach at Montana State. It's not happening. Scott Hattler, the great point guard, he's in private business in Great Falls. It's not happening. Quadre Lawless, not in coaching. So, I mean, Danny Sprinkle is the dude, and he's not only is he an All-Big Sky player formerly, but he also is from Montana too. So he can talk the talk when it comes to the boosters and the fundraising and all that. So if it doesn't work out, I think it should be indicative to the Montana State people just how hard it is to win at Montana State. Well, who knows? The quest towards it working out, it begins tonight. I don't think they're going to have a breakthrough tonight, but I do think that he does have some potential as the head coach of Montana State.
Well, when it comes to working out, if you're going to talk about it in terms that I think are reasonable, you talk about it at the Big Sky Conference level. And the top of the Big Sky Conference is the University of Montana and also Weber State. I mean, those have been, it's recently been Montana, but if you go back over the past decade, or really over the past long run, it's been Weber State and Montana. Those are the two that have been on the top throughout. How do you close the gap if you're Montana State between where you're at and where you've been and where those schools are? Here's what Danny Sprinkle had to say.
You have to be able to defend them. You have to be able to rebound with them. Those two programs, they have the belief. They have reason to believe. We got to develop that belief, and that belief doesn't just happen by writing some slogan down on the wall. It's a daily grind.
I think that's probably true. I mean, you gotta cultivate that over time and prove that you belong. I mean, that's what Montana State has beat Montana one time in the past 5 years, 10 tries, if not
more
longer,
like 10.
Right? So
they beat them twice in the last 10 years,
which is the same as a matter of ratios as once in the last 5. But boom, teaching my daughter math, man. I'm dialed in on this fraction stuff. Anyhow, there you go. So Danny Sprinkle and Montana State opening again. That game tipping off in just under 3 hours from now, 8 o'clock Mountain. And I'll look forward to seeing this game, seeing who rolls out there, seeing how they play. One guy also that we didn't mention, Devin Kirby, if he can put it together to be, the guy that he has the potential to be in a 6'11" frame and, great, athleticism, but often guys who are that tall, they're a little bit of, kind of the baby deer thing, trying to get their balance and just their movements around. But he really, especially, with him and Harold Frey hooking up around the basket, they had something working out last year. And so those two, he's a guy who's going to be far more, he's taller and more capable around the rim than just about anybody you're going to find in the Big Sky Conference. Does he have the strength? Does he have some of the hand-eye coordination type of stuff to really have that be impactful at this level? That's what's to be determined. But if he does, that it would be a big piece, literally and otherwise, for Montana State there. The Grizzlies, they open at Stanford tomorrow night, and it's a bit of unknown with the Grizzlies as well, as they graduate one of the all-time classes from Montana basketball. Obviously, we know about the 4 seniors who all finished their careers together last year, and the most wins in any 2-year span in the history of Montana basketball have happened in the last 2 seasons. They still, though, have a number of very good players, anchored by Saeed Pridgett, who is a first-team all-conference player in this preseason, but complimentary guys. Kendall Manwell comes to mind. Jared Samuelson's re-entry into the program. And by the way, I thought this was interesting. I don't know if you kind of picked up on this, but we will have for you the ESPN Roundtable tomorrow. Chris Cobb and Zach Payne, 2 of the assistant coaches. Chris Cobb, of course, been here the entire time as the associate head coach with Travis DeCuire at the University of Montana, and Zach Payne in his first year. But they kind of made a point of it to talk more than one time about Jared Samuelson in that roundtable that we did, which we'll have for you tomorrow on the show. And, he's a guy who left on circumstances. It was not, he obviously did not leave on bad terms with the University of Montana. There's some other things going on in his life that said, after he was here and had been playing really effectively in his first year of eligibility for the Grizzlies, to leave and go back to MSU Billings, and now as a senior,
Rocky Mountain College.
Oh, Rocky Mountain, excuse me. But returns all the way back and now is going to finish his career with the Grizz. How big of an impact will he be? A little hard to say, at this point, but certainly a guy who has done it before with the University of Montana, and obviously Mac Anderson as well. So there's Timmy Falls. There's guys who have played minutes, but it's going to be a whole new hierarchy, which maybe is a good thing, but also you got to work guys in who really haven't played, and a lot of young guys as well for Travis DeCuire's club this season, right?
How does Timmy Falls deal with an elevated role? Can he become a primary ball handler rather than just a spot minutes bench spark off the bench? Kendall Manuel is likely going to be relied upon to be Montana's second leading scorer. I don't think he's going to get I think he'll probably be somewhere in the 3rd or 4th in terms of shot attempts, But because he's going to shoot a ton of threes, because there's going to be a lot of inside out with Syed Pridgett and Jared Samuelson in the paint, I think that Kendall Manuel is going to get a lot of 3-point attempts, which is a good thing because he's their best shooter. But 6-point per game scorer expected to be more like a 12 to 14-point per game scorer. Can he make that jump? Is Josh Vasquez mature and ready enough to take over some of those primary ball handling duties if Timmy Falls isn't steady enough? What's the ceiling for Eddie Egan? Is he as advertised? Can he be a poor man's Michael Ogine? Can he be the defensive stopper, the energy guy that Montana needs? What sort of contribution are they going to get from Yagi Selchuk? He's a kid that transferred here at Semester last year. He'll be eligible at Semester this year.
He has to wait one calendar year, right? And so that comes up as we're headed closer to conference play.
Well, at this level, guys that are 6'8" or taller usually are kind of clunky. Either that or they're just big, like Jamar Coe. Yagi Selchuk he's a smooth looking athlete. I mean, he runs well, he moves well, he can pick and pop, he can shoot a little bit. We liked him watching him in practice last year.
Here's what I'd say about Selchuk, as best as I can understand it. When I went and watched him play, I was like, okay, he looks pretty good. Then somebody told me he was 6'8", and I said, no chance. No chance he's 6'8", because he doesn't look like a 6'8" guy, not because he's small. He's broad-shouldered, big kid. Yeah. But the way he moves and what he was up to, you thought, okay, this is like a 6'4", kind of a stretch guard type of guy. And then you find out, how could this guy be 6'8"? That is serious now.
Can Mac Anderson take the next step? Because I think we love the potential of Mac Anderson. Mm-hmm. He's got to make the dots connect, though. Yes. Because being a sort of wily, inconsistent, but sometimes electric freshman is great. But now you're a sophomore. Can you stay out of foul trouble? Can you become an elite rim protector? Can you straight up just do the things like catch the ball in transition? I mean, if Mac Anderson can just run the floor and catch the ball in transition, he's going to get himself a couple dunks a game because he's that sort of athlete.
Yeah, he's a great athlete.
Great athlete. He's just got to put it all together. But it's not uncommon that a guy like him, for lack of a better word, and he was just a little bit uncoordinated.
Yeah.
But it's because he grew 6 inches. I mean, Mac Anderson went from JV basketball to 6'9" D1 prospect in a year, and then was playing as a true freshman a year later. And
he also was not really integrated in the defensive rotation. What I mean is he had to think about, okay, where's the next place I got to go? Where's the next rotation to make? That progressed as the season went along, but that's obviously where it starts for a DeCure-led team, is on that defensive end.
And then finally, what sort of contributions? Who do they? I expect Josh Vasquez, the 3 freshmen that they brought in, I expect Josh Vasquez to play. I also expect Kyle Owens to play. Will Derek Carter Hollinger play? I'm not sure. He's a guy that's physically mature, but I'm not sure. And then the last question I have is, does Nassim Gaskin get his waiver? I think they're going to wait up to the 11th hour on this thing. He's a transfer from the University of Utah. Kendall Manuel got his waiver 2 days before the season. Well, here we are. They start tomorrow. So I guess if we don't know now, we're probably not going to know until then, and we'll see. But Nassim Gaskin could be one of Montana's straight-up best players. He could be one of the better players in the league if he gets his waiver right away. So we'll see on that as well.
One guy who I think a lot of Grizz fans are interested in seeing is Eddie Egan. Yep. He is a redshirt freshman, and he was, probably the best cheerleader on the team last year, I would say. Did a lot of dancing there in the khakis and all that. But he's going to get his opportunity. Travis DeCure was asked about Eddie Egan, and this is redshirt freshman year.
I think it helped a lot. Not only was he being guarded by him, but he had to try and stay in front of him on the other side of the ball, and that was very difficult. So it was a long year for him as a redshirt. And I don't know how often he'll see matchups with that type of speed. And so I thought that that was he did about as good as any guard's going to do with a redshirt year in terms of getting stronger and gaining weight. And now he gets a chance to go out and see how much he's improved and how close he is to game ready.
The question was, because last year Eddie Egan had to go against Ahmad Rory and Michael Ogine all day, every day, and I had no impression of what I thought of him because I told myself right away after watching practice, I'm like, I'm not going to evaluate this kid because it's just not fair.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going against the 2 of the best guards in the entire league, and he's a freshman, so it's not a fair evaluation of the kid. I was impressed with him during the scrimmage. He brings good energy, and Travis mentioned him putting on some weight too. He's up to 198 pounds, so that's up about 15 pounds since he got to Missoula. So maybe the added strength. Like you said, he was a great spark, a great celebrator, a great teammate. Can he bring that enthusiasm on the floor?
Travis DeCure on guys in general. being in new roles.
The best thing they can do is just come out and let it rip a little bit and then learn from it.
AKA, don't play scared. Go out, see what you got. Here's the thing is, you go to play at Stanford. Stanford is coming off of their international trip. You get one international trip every 4 years. So basically you can kind of key in on one class that you're pumped up about, that you really want to kind of bring together. First of all, you get like 5 additional games. I don't know how many additional practices, but also
you get 2 weeks of additional practices.
We know too, though, Coulter, right, how important chemistry is and just gelling. And the international trip has proven to be a place where a lot of teams use that as a time to just bond as a group, as as a team, and as a as they say, as a family. And this is the class that Stanford has chosen to use that on, which also means, just as a matter of fact, they are way ahead of everybody in games played, time spent together, practice time, and all of that. Point being, all I was going to say is this tomorrow night, for Montana, much like Montana State, it's not a practice, it's live, but it is still from the coach's standpoint, I think a slotted out. Who doesn't shy away from the bright lights? Who isn't afraid to go into a Pac-12 environment and play a road game and not just play well, but play unafraid? And those are two different things. I mean, often they go hand in hand. If you play scared, you don't play very well. That's almost certain. But you can play tenacious basketball and still not play very well. But that, to me, would be the more telling thing. Guys going in there who are not afraid of the moment, who are not afraid of the environment that they're in, and with a bunch of guys who, again, this is going to be a very young team, and even guys who are a little more senior who still haven't played necessarily a ton of minutes outside of a couple of guys, Manuel and Saeed Pridgett most notably. So it is that time of year, though, Coulter. I'm so pumped up about it.
Make no mistake, too. I mean, Stanford's a Pac-12, and Utah State's way better than Stanford.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Way better. Way. I mean, Stanford's picked 9th or 10th, depending on which poll you look at, in the Pac-12. They have not been very good since Mike Montgomery moved on. They've been really trying to figure out how to refine their niche. So we'll see. I mean, we just went through all the individual guys and all the intriguing storylines on this Grizz team. But to me, the number one storyline is what sort of coach is Travis DeCuire, and how does Travis DeCuire coach with a team that doesn't have established veterans, save a few guys? When Travis DeCuire first came to the University of Montana, he had Jordan Gregory and Martin Breuning. That's the roster he inherited. Then he built his own roster, and they had that one lull year where those guys were kind of sitting out or getting acclimated to the program. And then once they had Ahmad Rory and Jamar Coe and Michael Aguine had blossomed, and they still had Bobby Moorhead and yada yada yada. All these transfers and all these other guys, but they haven't. They've had veteran guys and go-to guys, and now Saeed Pridgett, it's his chance to be that guy. But largely, this is going to be a developmental type of roster. Chris Calvin told us that he was very excited about that element of it. But how does DeCuire navigate?
Yeah,
because this could be a team that just never stops getting better, or it could be a very frustrating non-conference. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Basketball has begun, boys and girls. And games on right now on ESPN television. And again, Montana State, Utah State tonight. That is on the Root Sports. And then the Grizzlies on the road at Stanford tomorrow evening to get things started. Told you we'd do the word of the day in this segment. So guess what? Man of my word, am I not? I am reading a poem after this as a form of debt payment. So we'll give you the word of the day right now. 200-8184 is the phone number. You text the word of the day to 200-8184. What do you win? How about this? A keg and a kegerator. That's a win-win, I think is what you call that. Kegerator from Fred's Appliance, a keg from Great Burn Brewing. We're going to give this away on Friday. You can enter every single day. The more days that you enter, the more chances you're going to have your number picked. 200-8184. 200-8184 is the phone number. The word of the day today, hoops. Hoops. Basketball season. It's going on. Hoops to 200-8184. I lost a bet to Sean Rainey because my Green Bay Packers lost to the Los Angeles Chargers. I now have to read a poem that he wrote. I will read it to you and cry next.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Two Tell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
At Florence Coffee Company, we invite you to try our extraordinary drip coffee. Our drip coffee is made from our signature blend, which is a medium roast, bold but very smooth, representing Indonesia, Central and South America. Florence Coffee Co. promises satisfaction in every cup of this perfect blend of the highest quality beans available. Stop by and try a cup today and visit us at florencecoffeeco.com.
Help protect our community from prescription drug misuse, abuse, and overdose on National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. This Saturday, you can turn in your unused or expired medications at the Grizz game. Just look for the DEA booth at the parking lot near the entrance of the stadium. If you can't make it to the game, go to MissoulaCounty.us for a list of Dropbox locations in Missoula. This event is brought to you by Curry Health Center, Safe Kids Missoula at Foundation for Community Health, and the Prescription Drug Task Force, a coalition of Missoula City County Health Department.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
From well-loved characters like Charlie Brown and the Gruffalo to a wizard kitten and robots saving whales, the Kidomatic Film Festival will feature family-friendly films to inspire kids of all ages, November 14th through the 17th. Hosted by the Roxy Theater and Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, this festival includes 4 days of fun activities, imaginative presentations, and over 25 short and feature-length films, screening November 14th through the 17th at the Roxy. To learn more about the Kidomatic Film Festival, go to kidomatic.org.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Hi, how are you? Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. After months of speculation and anticipation, Missoula's minor league baseball team has a new name. After 20 years as the Osprey, the Garden City's Pioneer League affiliate is now the Missoula Paddleheads. The team still plans on wearing Osprey and Missoula Timberjacks gear throughout the upcoming season.
The Class AA high school playoffs basically went chalk in the first round, with every team with a better record and all but one higher seed moving on. Missoula Sentinel posted a 45-7 win over Billings Skyview and will play Billings Senior Friday in Missoula. Senior ended Missoula Hellgate's season with a 41-13 victory. The other quarterfinal matchups feature Kalispell Glacier at Butte, Helena Capital at Billings West, and Helena High at Bozeman. The Hawks defeated Missoula Big Sky to end the Eagles season.
In Class A, 3 Southwestern A teams are among the final 8, including Hamilton, who will host Billings Central in a rematch of last year's state title game on Saturday. Frenchtown posted a 34-7 win over Whitefish to move into the quarterfinals, and a matchup with Eastern A top seed Miles City. Dillon will host Havre, and Laurel host Libby in the other 2 quarterfinal matchups.
And in Class B, Missoula Loyola is into the round of 8 after posting a 20-0 win over Huntley Project in Warden on Saturday. The Rams will take on Manhattan, who beat Loyola 26-14 in Missoula earlier this season, and Florence will take on top-seeded Fairfield after a dominant win over Shepherd.
Some games over the course of an NFL season, but the Chargers, really? The Chargers. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. SWX Montana Television, outstanding to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for being with us. We're broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. Okay, Coulter, the reckoning has come. I made a bet with Sean Rainey, our buddy Sean Rainey from ABC Fox Television, from SWX last week, who was on the show. He is a big Chargers fan. I am a big Packers fan. The Packers played the Chargers. The Packers are better than the Chargers. The Packers lost to the Chargers on Sunday. And so the bet was the winner writes a poem that the loser has to read on air. I have in my hand I think this is the first poem ever written by Sean Rainey, if I've got the cadences correct, which is against me. I will go over here because I'm still going to do this in style. If you're watching on SWX Television or on our YouTube channel, get my Packer hat on here. So here we go. My payment, my debt to society, the poem that Sean Rainey has written for me to read on air because of my lost bet. Here we go. First of all, the fact that I am having to read this is so unforeseen. Not only did my Packers lose, they lost by 15. To say Rivers outplayed Rodgers would be putting it mild. After that game, A-Rod has a new nickname, Phillip Rivers' 10th child.
That's a good line.
Rodgers, the GOAT? Yeah, right. He couldn't even win this silly bet. If he wants to win something, maybe he should go on The Bachelorette. Maybe I'm wrong, but everything with Aaron always seems like a saga. What I do know is he'll be having nightmares of Joey Bosa dominating Bulaga. Bosa and Ingram just sacks on sacks on sacks. Aaron Rodgers looking at them like, come on, guys, relax. Packers fans with playoffs on their mind, hoping they can go deep. Thinking they make it past the first round is nothing but a Lambeau leap. If the Packers were a stock, I'd advise you to sell. They're nothing but pretenders like Ryan Tutel. Speaking of those radio guys always talking like, hey, listen to me. Well, we know they're just jealous of those who are on TV. Ironic, as I parenthetically include, that we are on TV. Back the final line. But we can't all be winners like Sean Rainey, so he says. Instead, we're all losers reading this poem on Tutel and Nuanez.
Well done, Rainey.
Let me just, if I might, take that and give that a little shred.
I mean, the fact that he made it all about sports was incredibly disappointing to me and also duly impressive. I thought it was very good that he figured out ways to rhyme with Bulaga. I mean, he got a lot of different names in there. I also wanted him to rip your character to shreds. I did not want him to just talk about this dumb game.
Here's the thing that he knows, though. Given our place of
oh, yeah, right. We could do 30-minute segments as retorts.
But the other thing is that if I say bad things about the Packers, which I've just done, there's a good chance I don't have a job tomorrow. Like, this might have been my last show, when I go out and I say stuff like that. Anyway, don't let them say that I don't pay my bets. I still owe you a burned shirt from 2 years ago.
And I still owe you some cocktails.
You do. All right.
So I still don't get why the Chargers are bad. Can someone tell me? Give me one reason.
Well,
poor coaching?
Let me just say it succinctly. They're the Chargers. Like, no.
There's so many dumb narratives in sports. That's one of them. What do you mean? Like, the Chargers have been above average for most of the time. They're always disappointing or what?
Yes. They have found more ways to lose in more horrific fashion.
Doesn't everybody all find ways to lose besides like the dynasty franchises like the Packers and Steelers and
some teams
Patriots?
Just lose. Some teams are losers. Some teams just get beat.
Okay, wouldn't you rather have that? Or, excuse me, wouldn't you rather be the Chargers than the...
I'd rather be the Packers.
You'd rather be... Totally. But wouldn't you rather be disappointed than be the Browns?
No.
Why? Because then you at least win sometimes.
No. Don't sit here and tease me with, oh, we're good. What? Phillip Rivers has the most career starts in the history of the NFL for someone who's never played in a Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
I mean, is it? I mean, you're always telling me if Aaron Rodgers only. What's Phillip Rivers' history?
Well, he's never been in the argument, so
right. Okay.
The only reason he's in the argument is because he's played for 20 years, so he's got stats to like somehow poke his way in there. But Phillip Rivers has never been in the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He's always been in the top 10, but never in the top 5.
The Aaron Rodgers being Phillip Rivers' 10th child was a great line.
It was a great line. I still don't. Okay, like I know it's not all about name brand players, but the Chargers have. If you believe Phillip Rivers is still a good quarterback. They have multiple good receivers. They have multiple good running backs. I know Melvin Ingram has been disappointing and the holdout and all that. He's still a good player. They have multiple good edge rushers on defense. They have, I know Thomas Davis is washed, but he's an NFL veteran who's a borderline Hall of Famer. I just don't get it.
Well, but that is the point. The point is that you don't get it, and not because you don't get it, because it's impossible to understand why they are who they are and why they do what they do almost all the time. Even last year, I mean, they had a great. What were they? 12-4 last year, but couldn't figure it out to actually win the division, get a wild card game, and which then they got absolutely. They beat up Baltimore. Remember that defense that just went in and just absolutely just asphyxiated Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. They win that game, and then curtains. That's it. So, I mean, and one playoff win is, I don't know, start the parade now for the Chargers, I guess. You know? By the way, it's also worth mentioning this right now, Coulter, but in our league with Sean Rainey Fantasy, you and I went head-to-head, and I did win.
Lisa Nance.
Yep. Well, if you can't figure out your own ESPN login, I don't know what to tell you. Seems like a fairly shallow, scapegoat.
You guys peer pressure me into doing these things, and of course I want to do them with you because I think they're going to be fun, and then they're just never fun.
It's not fun.
If I'm going to play,
good. It's like
I am good. I'm winning all my other leagues. Want to know why? Because I'm invested in it. Because it costs $200, not $20. You want to gamble? Let's roll.
Oh, so what you're saying is you would be better at what you're doing here if you had put $150.
Yes, because I would actually care.
No.
Also, it was my first time ever doing an auction draft, and I admittedly was the worst person in the draft. I spent all my money on one guy, and he's hurt.
Draft is at 2:00. Of course, you decided to make a tee time for 1:35.
Oh,
and
stop.
then you are driving out to Sean's house to do the draft. Call me at 1:58. Okay, how does an auction draft work?
Being there ahead of time wouldn't have actually helped me.
No. Looking and understanding how to do the thing would have helped you.
No, having done it before would have helped me.
You did.
I'm an experience-based learner.
You did.
There is no way that you guys
name competition.
I did.
Though.
That's surprising.
The Dead Rock Miners, very, very impressive.
Anyways, congratulations on your tie win. I don't know, whatever you want. Let me light you on fire. We can call it all good.
Win? No, I did win.
I care so little that I haven't even looked. I didn't even know what the score was until you told me via text that we were tied, and therefore I haven't checked again and had no idea we lost.
It's a good tact. I like the way you're going with this. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Basketball season is beginning. We'll get you set for what we got coming up right now. First of all, it's 3 versus 4, and then after that, it's 1 versus 2, and also the college football rankings coming out, interestingly enough, ahead of their 1 versus 2, Alabama, LSU on Saturday. We'll get you set for all of it right after this. Hey, been telling you about this a little bit. Got to go online to MissoulaAutoDetailing.com and set an appointment right now with Shine Auto Detailing. Why do you want to get your car detailed? Well, looks great. It's organized. Feels good to drive around in a nice-looking car. And also, they will take care of your car through the winter to make sure that all the salt and sand on the roads is protected. They're going to put a ceramic coating around the bottom of your car, around the outsides, to make sure that you don't have chips, that you don't have infiltration of salt into the engine, all that kind of stuff. You go online, again, MissoulaAutoDetailing.com. There's no confusing pricing. All the prices are easily listed right there. You can know exactly what you're getting, and you schedule a deluxe detail, they're going to give you a free headlight restoration, especially now. A lot of darkness going on. Make sure you can see with your good headlights. Get all that film off of there. Headlight restoration, $75 value for free when you get a deluxe detail. Shine Auto Detailing online, MissoulaAutoDetailing.com.
Do you know what's at stake after a car accident? Not only will you have to deal with pushy insurance companies, auto repair shops, endless doctor's appointments, and dozens of unforeseen problems, but also your normal day-to-day life. I'm Coulter here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys, and she knows how hard this can be.
That's right. And with all of that, it can seem tempting to take the quick settlement that the insurance company is offering. But I can tell you from experience that it is not going to be a fair amount. I see it all the time where someone has settled with the insurance company and months later realizes that they still have pain from the accident, and now they're having to pay those bills out of their pocket. I don't want that to happen to anyone.
So what should our listeners do, Catherine?
Give us a call and discuss your situation with an attorney. The call is free and we'll gladly talk about your situation with you. If you have a case that we can help with, you will owe us nothing out of pocket. We actually make the insurance company pay for us to help you.
There you have it. Call the Advocates at 406-640-4444 or go online, MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve the Advocates on your side.
We combine quality ingredients with home-style recipes to create the Montana Club's fall comfort food menu. Savor our tender boneless beef short rib or caramelized brandy apple pork shank. Dig into our classic savory chicken pot pie or fall for our zesty skillet lasagna. Top things off with our creamy pumpkin skillet a la mode. Scratch-made comfort food that's as real as it gets. Served 11:30 to close at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up, pump it up.
Town Pump has a great selection of wines. Right now, you can pick up a bottle of Barefoot Bubbly 750 milliliter, only $8.99, and Liberty Creek wines 1.5 liter, only $7.99. Stop by your local Town Pump and check out their wine selection for yourself. There's one right down the road.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
It's a rite of passage, that first bank account. Explore the great options for your young adult with a visit to Farmer State Bank, online at farmersebank.com or in person at any of our 9 locations in Western Montana. Our checking and savings accounts are designed to fit any lifestyle and budget, with the flexibility, innovations, and security today's consumers demand. Start out right with Farmer State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907. Member FDIC.
Tutel and Nuanez. Listen to the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes. 1029ESPN.com.
Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky on ESPN Radio for you. That's how we do it. It's Tutel and Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcast. Search Tutel and Nuanez. Listen, subscribe, review, rate. Click on the stuff. We appreciate that. Podcast available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Also be looking out for the FCS Speculators podcast, the betting podcast, going to be coming out to you. Episode 7 this week. Rolling with that thing. So check that out here in a little bit. Right now, 4:28 left in the first half. The third-ranked Kansas Jayhawks are 3 points back of the fourth-ranked Duke Blue Devils, 22-25. In about 5 minutes left in the first half there. So we will get you out to that game again as soon as we're done here. And you can go, enjoy a little bit of college basketball, the first day of college basketball here on ESPN Radio. Coulter, Michigan State is the number one team in the nation in the preseason polls and all of that. People talk about the fact that that college basketball only matters in March and people only care about the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. And this is an example of why college football gets it so right, because the regular season is so important. First of all, I think it's just an awful, awful, awful argument in every way because you just can't compare basketball to football. It's so much more about the number of games played than anything else. But if you want to talk to me about what's great about college basketball, especially in the regular season, how's the first night of the season 3 versus 4 and 1 versus 2 grab you? Let me know when that ever happens, ever, in college football. It only incidentally is happening because the top 2 teams in the nation this weekend are in the same conference and have to play each other, LSU and Alabama, which is going to be great. But you know what? It would be great anyways. I can't wait for that football game, certainly. But the point is that this is fun, and these teams want to play each other. They want to see what the other ones got and use that as motivation if you lose and where you fall short, and use it as confidence building if you win. And it's fun basketball to open the season with the top 4 teams all playing against each other.
You guys haven't let me tease this new thing that we're working on, so I'll leave it completely anonymous. But we've talked to a whole bunch of guys that have been involved in college basketball for a really long time, and one of the main takeaways that they all share is just the fact that everybody used to play each other, and that's still true at the highest level. And so it's sort of, to me, it's two-sided. Montana can't get anybody good to come play them, because why would you? Mm-hmm. Why would you go play in a place that's a pretty darn good environment against a team that's pretty darn good where you have a chance to lose? Like when Boise State lost here a couple years ago, they are never coming back.
Never.
Gonzaga will never come to Missoula.
Yeah.
20 years ago, everybody play everybody.
Yeah.
Now everybody plays everybody if they know that if they win, if they beat you or they lose to you, it's still good for them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the what happens tonight is inconsequential to these teams, except for when it comes. It's not inconsequential. That's the wrong way to say it. But when the seeding comes around, the team that loses the Duke-Kansas game will still get credit for playing in the Duke-Kansas game.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Right, sure.
And if you win it, it's probably going to be the difference between a 1 or a 2 seed.
The other thing
that part I love
is this.
But I wish that there was a little bit more of it. You know what I mean? Like I wish that Gonzaga would come to Missoula, Montana, for example.
And I don't know. I understand sort of on a one level why you wouldn't, because there's more than just that. It's not even just the why would you go someplace where it's a game that you could possibly lose. So why would you go to a place that's on a national landscape, obscure, to play in front of a great crowd in the stadium, but not on any sort of profile.
I get it.
On any sort of television
I get
or
it.
whatever.
I get it, but it's one of the missing factors in. So last time the Big Sky Conference tournament, or a Big Sky Conference team won an NCAA tournament game, was when Montana got the 12 seed in 2006. They beat Nevada. But the number one factor in them getting a 12 instead of a 13 or 14, which the Big Sky gets every year, was the fact that Stanford came to Missoula and Montana beat Stanford. Just one game can change the whole thing. It's also one of the reasons why it's been unfortunate, at least from the league perspective, that Weber State hasn't made it to the tournament in the years that because Weber State has been played in this Beehive Classic, which is probably going to go away. But when they get to play Utah State and BYU, those teams will play them. And they'll play them on neutral court because, like you're saying, because of the audience that's not just in the stadium but elsewhere. But a Weber State team that would have beat BYU and Utah State in recent years that then went to the tournament probably would have had a chance for a higher seed too. Anyways, regardless, back to your point.
Well, the thing that what you said is right, because, listen, Michigan State loses to Kentucky. Okay, you're not the number one team in the nation anymore, but your opportunity to become a number one seed in the tournament has been inhibited almost not at all. And moreover, I think just about any coach will tell you, if you're a top 3 seed in the tournament, I don't know. Let's put it like this. The way the bracket is built, which you have no control over whatsoever, is far more influential to how, quote, easy or hard or whatever tough your situation is than if you are a 1 seed compared to a 2 or even a 3. Okay? Now, if you get into the 4 or 5 seed, a whole different deal. But if you're a top 10 team in the nation, you're occupying a top 3 seed in the tournament, I think it's a lot more incidental And, outside of maybe that very first game where you are playing a 16 seed that's going to be, presumably a team that you're going to beat outside of Virginia 2 years ago, that doesn't matter too much. So these games, especially very early in the year, I think are, like you said, if you lose it, you're not hurt for that, so why not play that game? What I want to know is, Colter, the Grizzlies tomorrow night are in, going to be trying to figure out who they are, what their rotations are, which, by the way, almost every team is going to be in that to some extent here in the first week of the season and so forth. But Stanford, even though they've gone on that trip and everything, they're picked to be 9th, like you said, 9th or 10th in the Pac-12, which is is the worst high major basketball conference in America at this point in time, according to basically everybody. How competitive could this game be?
How many points does Cy Pridgett score?
Do you have any idea?
Cy Pridgett's going to be ready to roll. I mean, Cy Pridgett was ready to roll last year in these big games. I mean, you got to remember that Cy Pridgett, first of all, has had a chip on his shoulder since he stepped foot in Missoula, Montana. Yep. Second of all, he was recruited by multiple Pac-12 schools. Against Creighton last year, he chose Montana over Creighton, and then he went out and showed his stuff against Creighton, and he had one of his best games of the season. So he's not going to be scared. Can he be the best player on the floor at times? If he can, Montana's got a shot.
Arizona's the number 21 team in the nation. Okay, they're a top 4 team in the Pac-12, which is not great for them and where they've been, but it's still pretty good. They're playing Northern Arizona. They're a 22.5-point favorite. Would you like to guess the number on the Stanford-Montana game?
Say Stanford -7.
Very good. I'm impressed with you. They're -9. 9-point favorites. Now, how much of that
what did Montana lose last time out there at Stanford? They were winning against Stanford with 5 minutes to go, and then they didn't make a shot down the stretch, which is what has kind of been the plague of Montana in these quote-unquote play-up games.
Yeah, but I guess the point is that when you graduate the class that you graduated at the University of Montana a year ago, you think, okay, that was the class that if they were going to do, and they did. I mean, they beat Pitt, an awful Pitt team, but they did win a game against an ACC team on the road. If there was a team that was going to do it, it would have been one of those teams. And now all these games against 5 high major conference schools, all on the road in this non-conference, is just getting a feel for playing teams like that. But I just wouldn't quite sell it so easily, especially when, again, Stanford is not a very good basketball team right now. It's not a very good basketball team right now. And like you said, there are some dudes on Montana's team who are not going to be. I mean, Kendall Manuel played in the Pac-12. That's where he transferred from. Timmy Falls never been scared a day of his life from anything. Doesn't mean, excuse me, again, that he's going to play well, because we've seen him. We've seen him go the other way too. But you never know how that's going to go, right?
Totally. No, I totally agree, and I also think there's a real factor here too, where what you said was actually detrimental to Montana. In other words, if this is the year you're going to do it, this is the year, and you're expected to win. Like, Montana was, honestly, there was a lot of scuttle in the little bubble that Montana exists in. Well, yeah, Montana's going to go win multiple Power 5 games this year. When that is the expectation and the pressure, that's really tough to deal with. Yeah. Whereas if you could Montana hasn't got a chance to be an underdog in multiple years. Now they do. That's going to be a fascinating factor for this team this year.
Well, I'm just happy that it's going on. That's all I'm saying. We send you out now to check out some of that basketball. 123 left in the first half. Duke up by 1, 31-30. Great basketball game here early between Duke and Kansas. Enjoy that, followed by Michigan State, Kentucky on ESPN Radio. We'll see you tomorrow. Two-tell Nuanez. Good night.
Alpine Touch has been part of the fabric of Montana for more than 60 years. Decades ago, Russell Street started selling his touch of magic in whitefish. Years later, Alpine Touch's all-purpose seasoning remained